Why does biblical scholarship matter? Why does teaching matters of what, for some, are purely issues of religion and faith matter? There are myriad answers, but if I had to boil it down to one thing, one word even, it would be this: truth. There's so much flawed teaching out there that it can be nearly impossible for someone seeking good answers to their questions to find them. And because many people will rest their worldview, their hopes and dreams, and even their faith on this data, it's essential that biblical scholarship be constantly advancing toward truth. And where it falls short or runs amok, it must be reined in. Our tool for this, our precision instrument, is logic. Why logic? First and foremost, logic matters because it's our closest proxy to the truth. What is the truth, you ask? Well, that could be a video in and of itself. Perhaps it's undefinable, or it's a know it when you see it. But for our purposes now, the truth can be thought of as something like this: the best and most objective explanation for any given set of evidence. If we have 2 sticks and we add 2 more, the best and most objective explanation for the number of sticks we have is, you got it, 4. 4 would be the truth here on the question of how many sticks we had. But what about something a bit more complicated? Does Sally love me? Wow, that's a bit harder, right? Love is intangible and it has no quantifiable way of being measured. And love means different things to different people and in different situations. So how can we get to the best and most objective explanation for the evidence? We'd start with the definition of love here. For example, let's use romantic love. Again, an entire topic in its own right. What is some evidence we could look for? Does Sally say, "I love you"? Does she smile when you come into the room? Does she show you any physical affection? How about gifts? Does she go out of her way to do things for you? You get the point. We could also ask about negatives. Does she call you hurtful names? Does she gaslight you? Let's say all the positives were yes and the negatives were no. Does that prove Sally's love for you as truth? Not quite. But what would be the best and most objective explanation for the evidence here? I think we'd all agree that it's a yes. And so here we've used logic, more specifically abductive reasoning, to draw an inference to the best explanation of the data. If Sally does all these positive things we describe, we can say abductively that the best and most objective explanation for the evidence is that Sally has romantic love for you. Lucky you. So how about an even more philosophical question, such as, is there a God who cares about me and my life? For the record, I firmly believe there is, and that this is true. But this channel isn't about my beliefs. This channel brings logic to arguments in biblical scholarship and teaching, wherever that leads. Now, before I get anyone's hopes up, I won't try to elaborate on every detail of how I came to that truth in this video. I will in a future video, or more like multiple videos. Still, the same test applies. And were we to apply our test here, we need to somehow define God, and then we need to examine the evidence we have and see if that's the best and most objective explanation for that evidence. I've done that in my life. And it's my aim with this channel to help anyone who's struggling to make sense of the evidence in biblical studies for themselves to do the same, wherever that leads them. As a postdoctorate professional, albeit not in religious studies, I've been amazed, or more accurately disappointed, with the sloppiness and imprecision in many of the arguments in biblical studies. I get it. This is an area where the implications of conclusions can lead to discomfort, and where the truth, the logical truth, can force a reckoning. But as logicians, as scientists, as honest brokers, it's our job to get to the best and most objective explanation for the evidence, no matter how uncomfortable that makes us. So be prepared, because regardless of your faith predisposition, this channel will make you uncomfortable from time to time. I will never proselytize. I truly have no agenda to convert anyone to anything. I see my responsibility as helping clarify arguments and elucidate fallacies, and then let you make the decisions you need to make for yourselves. As a taste of what's to come, I'll give you a brief overview of how I came to accept certain facts as true about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. This will only cover the highlights, and it won't on its own get anyone over the humps of what the evidence can't prove, indeed isn't even powered to prove, which is whether or not Jesus is God. That next step is beyond logic, and it's its own faith journey, which will vary from person to person. What I can do, hopefully, is help you see the truth in the evidence that is provable. For example, there are 10 sets of facts that have been established as being the best and most objective explanation as it relates to the evidence of the life and death of Jesus Christ. 1. Jesus Christ existed. He was a real man on this earth in the first century. 2. Jesus Christ was a Jewish man baptized by another first century Jewish man named John the Baptist. 3. As a Torah observant Jew, Jesus served as a teacher and healer during his ministry. 4. Jesus was tried and condemned to death for his actions, culminating in his crucifixion by Roman authorities. 5. Jesus died and was buried. However, when his followers came to his tomb, his body was nowhere to be found. 6. Over the next several days, Jesus' followers and hundreds of other eyewitnesses reported seeing Jesus resurrected from the dead, alive and in the flesh, many despite previous skepticism. 7. Though they may not have understood it during his life, Jesus' followers came to believe that he was the divine and only begotten Son of God. 8. While on the road to Damascus, a Jewish man named Saul of Tarsus, himself on his way to persecute these very worshippers of Jesus, reported seeing the resurrected Jesus, thus himself converting to a belief in Jesus as the divine Son of God. 9. The sources providing for or supporting this information come not only from 4 different gospel accounts, several of which claim to be contemporary eyewitness accounts, but also the letters of Saul, now Paul, and several non-biblical sources such as Jewish historian Josephus, Roman historian Tacitus, and others. 10. Finally, many of the details in the gospel accounts, such as names, locations, events, and geography, etc., have been corroborated by archaeological and historical data as being accurate in their description of real and genuine historical people and things. Now, before we go one step further, please notice one thing. None of this claims to prove that Jesus was, in fact, the divine Son of God, member of the Holy Trinity, etc. I will also say that many of the points are contested. That is, you will hear some skeptics cast doubt on the evidence, but without any question whatsoever, without any equivocation of any kind, and despite other fantastic and wonderful alternative possibilities, the 10 facts I've laid out are the best and most objective explanation of the evidence. The idea is not to convince you of this here and now, and if you're skeptical, you have a right to be. We'll unpack all of these points in several ways over multiple videos on this channel. Again, the idea with each will be to clarify the good arguments, debunk the myths, and reject fallacies. All of it data-driven, all of it driven by logical processes. Then I'll leave you to decide for yourselves what you feel is the best and most objective explanation for the evidence. Your own truth.